The Milwaukee Public Library has an extensive archive of socialism in Milwaukee, which became the laboratory for an experiment. Highlights were pulled from the collection and laid out in eras. Then 3 invested Milwaukeeans were recruited to spend an afternoon exploring the archival items. The group included a historian of the long Black freedom struggle, champion of fair housing, and executive director of a storied local organization with deep ties to socialism. What emerged from the group's exploration are stories of a changing city, as well as persistent issues that carry on to the present day.
This is a very useful teaching tool. Socialism and democracy mean the same thing. Government of the people, for the people, and by the people cannot exist so long as we have government of industry by the bosses for the profits of an owning class. Democrats and Republicans do nothing for the Negro.
See, we can tell you're a scholar because you're drawn to the text, and I'm a hack, and I'm drawn to this early meme, right? It's a Repidemican. I was like, oh, here's a picture. Milwaukee's contribution to the socialist movement.
There's women on there.
Yeah, I'm shocked that there's women on there in 1910.
The imagery is great.
Oh, I found something juicy. Here they're denouncing the Soviet Empire and the international communist movement.
Because Milwaukee was less about being anti-capitalist and more like, how do we work within capitalism? Mm-hmm. The eternal issue that has been with us in all ages, my friends, and is with us in this campaign is, on the one hand, the common right of humanity, and on the other, the selfish interests of our economic kings.
They spit hot fire.
Socialism and Americanism.
Socialism, the world of tomorrow.
Isn't that a Disney exhibit? Socialism, the world of tomorrow, it's a small world.
Yep. A little teapot.
For nearly half of the 20th century, a socialist mayor sat in Milwaukee City Hall. Emil Seidel was the first, serving one term from 1910 to 1912. At a time when corruption ruled the day in local politics and government, Seidel insisted upon honesty. He sought to earn the faith of Milwaukee's burgeoning working class through transparency, common sense reforms, and clean government.
What a great idea to have a city budget exhibit.
Holy cow.
Right.
That was the place to be.
I doubt that we've had that many digital visitors to the local government's budget page.
Oh, not at all.
You know what I mean?
And I bet most adults have no idea what different functions of government are. Like, what does the city clerk do? And here you have this whole gigantic exhibit. Licenses requiring authorization by mayor, auctioneer, automobile, bill poster.
Elevator department.
You could be a hack. I've been saying I'm a hack for years, and here I've been operating without a license. Can I take a picture of this? Because I didn't know that these were professions, and I want to reconsider my life.
So on the one hand, it's obviously showing what the budget is about, but it's also giving people a sense of what the role of government is.
And making things really tangible to their lives.
Well, here they're explaining, it says, does it pay to have a Bureau of Weights and Measures? And they're showing how much you save by not being ripped off.
There was so much corruption.
Well, how much of that was government corruption, too?
I think when Seidel came in, he got rid of a lot of people in the police department and a lot of city workers just to kind of weed out that corruption.
So here's an interesting thing about Seidel. He's organizing studies. Here they are confronting tuberculosis and the epidemic of the time. And they're talking about the gross overcrowding of residencies. And then they have a map showing the location of tuberculosis at present on record in the health department.
Wait, is that the COVID map? Come on, man.
It's the COVID map, yep. Where the babies die in Milwaukee.
On, really?
I mean, you don't
You
get
couldn't
more
come up
powerful
with a
than that.
better name than that?
I just laugh at this. What 1,419 Milwaukee children are doing out of doors? Doing nothing. Working, playing. I wonder how they surveyed them. Those kids there, they're doing nothing. Look at him. Yeah, a little scoundrel. He's gonna be a hack.
You know, how much of this is really about public health?
Daniel Hohn served as mayor from 1916 to 1940, Milwaukee's industrial heyday. This meant both general prosperity, but also challenges like overcrowding and pollution. The term sewer socialist was coined during Hohn's tenure, intended as an insult, but Milwaukee's socialists wore it as a badge of honor. Hohn cared more about infrastructure than ideology, pursuing a better quality of life for Milwaukee's citizens through public enterprise. Among many other things, this included bolstering the park system, public housing, and of course, waste management.
I wonder if these were the earlier horse-drawn ones, and then these are the new mechanized ones. So it's like because this truck looks much older than.
But imagine like when somebody saw this for the first time, how impressed they would have been. Oh my
great.
gosh.
Is the sanitation at the health department?
Department of Public Works.
Works, okay. Because we got influenza, get vaccinated, and protect your health, and it's hard to not take those into conversation. Put those
With
in the conversation.
sanitation?
Yeah, with sanitation, yeah. But there's something about the 20s where we see the broader question of progressive era. I had never heard that there was a plan for all the parks to connect.
I think that this map illustrates how Milwaukee was planning to have people come here and raise a family here. And they're giving you the metric of where you want to live based on how you can send your children outside.
There's something about focusing on recreation. It's different. I mean, otherwise children were, they're supposed to get a job and as soon as possible. But maybe this is representing shifting understanding of what's needed for young people.
I wonder how much of this is connected to when we were looking at the exhibit on the other table under Seidel, and they had 33% were in labor and 20 were playing. How much of this seeded into Hohn's version of like, all right, you're doing nothing outside, now we're gonna have some playgrounds for you. And
Great connection. That's what Garden Home was.
Was Garden Homes a response to overcrowding or a response to affluent folks still wanting to get to Milwaukee jobs but live?
It was affordable.
Posh.
It was supposed to be affordable.
Completed in 1923, Garden Homes was a landmark, the country's first public housing project, a pragmatic and aesthetic solution to Milwaukee's housing shortage. And when completed, only whites lived in Garden Homes. Frank Zeidler was mayor of Milwaukee from 1948 to 1960. In those 12 years, Milwaukee doubled in size geographically from annexation, and the city's black population tripled as families arrived during the second wave of the Great Migration. Many white Milwaukeeans were critical of Zeidler's attempt to embrace the newly arrived black population, while others pushed him to do more. This tension took a toll on Zeidler. His last act as mayor was commissioning the Inner Core Report, an in-depth study documenting conditions in Milwaukee's central city and offering potential future actions.
People from Puerto Rico, southeastern and southwestern states, most of whom were of low income, have settled in the Inner Core, bringing with them a heritage and cultural pattern of their own. As the number of these families increased, their behavior patterns became more noticeable and in many instances disturbing.
Acculturation and manpower needs. It appears that the great problem of all newcomers to the core area of the city is orientation and acculturation to the life of a highly industrialized urban community. Too many Negro children do not picture themselves as mechanics, technicians, artisans, or professional people.
I just want to make sure that when we get to this moment, we're not then saying that the only immigrants who showed up poor were black and Latino, or the only folks who really struggled were black and Latino. I don't think that's true. As if there were no poor European immigrants. There had to be, there were. This history tells us that it's been a challenge the whole strip.
It's like there's always going to be an underclass. It seems like a lot of the anti-Milwaukee sentiment, the first time I started seeing it was around the annexation. Like they kept changing the laws to prevent Milwaukee from annexing more.
Which areas were annexed under Zeidler? This area, okay. I mean, he had to, right? Because otherwise, the city's already bounded by the lake on the east, and then the other emerging suburbs are starting to hamstring the city's growth. So that had to happen for, I'm sure, geopolitical reasons, right?
How much of the problems that Zeidler faced in managing the city also depended on the ability of folks to go to suburbs where they wouldn't deal with folks of lower incomes, they didn't have to deal with taxes to support public programs, and they began to get bitten by that capitalist bug where they thought, you should move out of the city because poor people are there.
So why does the socialism project fall apart? Racism seems to be too simple of an answer. The history of socialism is responding to needs, and those needs they also happen to be present in the 1960s. It's just that the population might look a little different. Obviously, socialism doesn't win out, capitalism wins out. And yet, we're still having the very same conversation today.
You know, I think that the challenges echo from decade to decade. You know, maybe the faces change slightly, but the plot device seems to be the same.
Socialism was there to address the human spirit and to look at things like your education, how your garbage gets collected, how your sewer gets cleaned.
The importance of municipal government to the health of a city. Like that's the story that I'm taking away, that we still have to hold government responsible to do the things it can do.
Somehow the narrative shifted from you should be proud that you're taking responsibility for your community to today where I'm showing you how it's patriotic to not give a shit about your neighbor, and I reject that.
Many things have gone away from our government and what we think our government role is.
We've seen in different moments where we quickly as a nation can move toward what would be considered socialist reforms. And then we kind of boomerang back into our own selfish, greedy desires that capitalism helps to feed.
And I couldn't tell you, you know, the definitions between the different types of socialists or where these things broke apart, but I do like the ethos of us being responsible for one another as co-citizens.
Right.
Somehow we lost that.